our two lovely panelists, Josh and James, uh, both former Millersville students, both very accomplished producers, arrangers. Um, love all the music that both of them have put out. I think they both have a really analytical perspective on music and love to pick it apart. I'm going to have Josh go first. So, Josh, feel free to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and just get right into it.
Cool. Yeah. So, like Mike said, I'm Josh. I'm a Millersville alum. I just graduated in May into the hellish landscape. That's the remains of the music industry during COVID. Um, but yeah, so I'm a engineer, producer, bass player, arranger. I love really weird theory concepts and kind of exploring different aspects of that. But the first song I'm going to go over, I wrote back 2 years ago and started tracking it then and just released it this past spring because I was sitting on it for forever and just decided to finish it. But this is more of um, I listened to a lot of shoegaze around the same time I wrote it, so it's kind of a little spacey, a little bit more kind of heavy hitting. Um, and if you listen to anything like Underoath or any sort of like post-hardcore bands like that, it kind of has some vibes in that. And I had Steve Katona play drums, and then Lance Samuel sang on it, and then I did the rest of the vocals and bass, guitar, synth, and then mixed, mastered, produced, and the rest of it. So I'll go over that first. Um, all right, cool. So we have that. Let me bring this down. Yeah, so I'm basically just going to kind of talk through, make sure I'm all good. Yeah. So basically, in the beginning of this song, it's guitar, rhythm guitar, doubled drums, and then my vocals. And the idea was to kind of leave out the low end and any sort of lead part to kind of, be able to build up from there. Because it does a pre-chorus, but it's kind of like a fake me out pre-chorus. So we have first verse, fake me out pre-chorus, verse two, and then pre-chorus and then chorus. So I'll kind of talk through and play through it, like chunk by chunk. But basically, first verse, again, no bass, no guitar, and then once the pre-chorus hits, um, it's more heavy hitting vocals. Bass comes in, lead guitar comes in for a second, and then it comes back down for verse two, where it's now lead guitar drops out and the bass stays in. Lead comes back in for pre-chorus two, and then chorus is when Lance starts singing. Yeah, we'll kind of go from there. But I'll play through it and then kind of explain. Gets fat. And then drops back down. So yeah, we have the chorus hit, Lance comes in, and you know, it's more steady going in the drums and the bass. Halfway through the chorus, I actually start going in between octaves to kind of get that higher register in, just to build it up a little bit more. So at this point, what I kind of like to do is starting to, defy the expectations a little bit of what's coming next. So you kind of, expect you to keep going like distortion, higher energy. So what Logan actually helped me out on this part a little bit is we were like, oh, let's make this super
Logan.
spacey as much as possible. So what we ended up doing is in the Axe effects, we had some dumb reverb trail of like 10 to 15 seconds. There's a lot of like reverse guitar going. There's a lot of reverse piano going. We automated when we track drums, we opened up the top curtains in the room and placed a mic really high up to get that. And we automated that and the room mics higher so the drums get even spacier and farther away. And basically that goes until the pre-chorus hits, and then everything slams back down. Room mics, the automation goes back down to normal, and we're back into heavy hitting, and then it's into another chorus until we hit the bridge. So we'll go from there. And then we slam back down into everything else. Yeah, so at this point, we kind of hit the bridge, and I want to bring everything back down. So we have single guitar, and because I'm super cheesy, this song's about me and my best friends freshman year. We used to drive to the Pinnacle Overlook at like 2 o'clock in the morning and just like technically trespass, but we would just kind of hang out there. So I put the synthesizer I had a nice wind blowing sound. So I threw that in because I'm super cheesy. And then gang vocals kick in, we start chugging, and then it goes into a steady strum. And then by the end, the picking guitar that you hear in the beginning actually drops out, and we go into a chord that's outside the key to kind of throw off the end a little bit. And then we slam back in with a brought down chorus, which then goes through into a double chorus. And by the end, gang vocals kick in. Synth layers kick in, reverse piano kick in. I basically told Steve Katona to kind of just go ham on the drums, which he indeed did. And then there's a nice little Easter egg. The one synth lead part in the end is actually the guitar lead part of one of the other songs I released, Wormwood, which is about dealing with depression and kind of just dealing with all that. So it was a nice, modulated to a major key and into the new tonal center. So that was a nice little Easter egg that, obviously, if it's gone, you can kind of tell there's something else missing, but it's not in the forefront. I kind of just want to throw that in. But we'll kind of listen through the bridge all the way through, and then we can go on to some of the more stuff I was working on recently. But here we go. But yeah, and of course, if you're ever slamming back into something, you gotta throw in some reverse cymbals and reverse snare drum for the final. But yeah, I made Lance blow out his vocal cords or vocal folds for that last. I'm like, how high can you sing? He's like, we can try. So he went up the last octave and he freaking belts it. But yeah, so again, this was written back, 2 years ago, so my junior year, and this was kind of what I was more into. Some of the stuff I've been working on, I think the Instagram reposted this. So we're going to get into some weird modulation stuff. So there's a couple artists I've been listening to recently that do different metric modulations and different ratios and different groupings of subdivisions. So this one, move the zoom window over. So if you look at the top, we have different groupings of 5, 7, and 9. So basically, the 5/8 is just so the way I look at it is each measure is actually just the quarter note pulse. And when I hand this over to Alexi, that's basically what he went off of, and he just played the 16 note pulse of that quarter note. But what the bass line follows and what the drums and synth follow is they kind of outline either quintuplets, septuplets for the 7, or whatever you want to call 9. I don't care. But basically, what you end up doing is I start off with this 5/8, and that started at 142 BPM. So what you end up doing is whatever you want to modulate to, you take that number and you divide it by the original number. So you take 7 divided by 5, and then you multiply that by the original BPM, which is how you get the 198.8. But basically what that allows it means this 5 and this 7 take up the same amount of time. So the reason the song is called short long is because it accents the short and long pattern of each grouping. So if it's 5, it's 1 2 1 2 3. If it's 7, it's 1 2 3 1 2 3 4. If it's 9, it's 4 and 5. I'm not going to try and say it out loud because it's too fast for me. But yeah, so basically the synth line kind of covers that. The drums accent both the quarter note pulse as well as the short long. But yeah, so it kind of sounds like this a little bit, and I'll start from here. But yeah, so it's just a fun little exercise to do. So basically, if I just solo the click, it sounds like this. But that downbeat is every single quarter note going through. It's just a different subdivision. So like with Alexi playing the 16 notes over top and the drums accenting that downbeat, you can feel it in 4. But if you were to solo the synthesizers for everything, you can hear the arpeggios play that while some of them accent the downbeat. So. But yeah, so it's just kind of a cool exercise and concept I've been working with. It's taken me a long time to actually be able to use it in a musical concept, and actually make it sound good. A lot of the times it just sounds like a dumb little exercise. But for all my rhythm players out there, this really helped with my groove to be able to feel these different subdivisions, because it's feeling these minute little details that can change. And basically the way I end up learning how to play between the different different tuplets is just by bringing this down to like 25% speed and just really sitting there and clapping and speaking it out. But yeah, so this was one of the ones I was working on. And then if we hop over to Logic, there's one of the other ones I was working on as well. And this is kind of another example of um, being able to do this concept, but in a different way. Um, so basically, what ended up happening is I wanted to take I want to take a a measure of 5/8 or a quintuplet, and I wanted to have it where I took a bunch of them strung together and do different accents through it. So this is technically, I believe, the measure. The first part is in 28. Um, and basically, what I do, it's 2 2 3 2 3 3 2 3. So short short long short long long short long. So I had that, and then what I did from there is I wanted to make, do the modulation to see what I can make out of it. So all the twos in the first one become three, and all the threes in the first one become four. So it's still short short long long short long, but it's either 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 1 yeah 1 2 3 4 if I could speak that fast. But it creates this really cool texture that I really like. This is all just either just drums or synths. I haven't added any actually bass parts to this. And this part at the end is something I was working on earlier today, so I'm going to shift that all over for right now. But basically, it's kind of that accent going through. And as far as harmony for both this example and the other example, the short long one that I did with Alexi, it just goes between a E major 9 sharp 11 and a B major sharp 9 sharp 11. And what I found with this kind of stuff is if you're doing all these kind of weird groupings with the modulations and the accents, if you start adding more complex harmony into it, instead of kind of just like a pretty still pad of a tonal center, it sounds really jumbled. People better than I could easily do it. Like Tigran Hamasyan is a great piano player, and he does a lot of this kind of stuff, and he can do some weird stuff with the harmony, but I can't do that, so I stick to simple. So again, the first bit of this will be groupings of 2 and 3, and then once we hit this measure, it becomes groupings of 3 and 4. But we'll kind of listen through and talk through it a little bit. Yeah, it goes from 5 groupings of quintuplets to groupings of septuplets in the different accent patterns. I don't know how I did it, but to me, I'm not sure how it sounds to you guys, but the 7 actually sounds slower than the 5. But in reality, if you look at the BPM, like the first part, I forget exactly. 1 second. Yeah, it's 145, and then it goes up to 203. But because of the stretched out subdivision, it has this nice, cool, like wavy, like what is going on kind of effect to it. And again, it's kind of the same thing of being able to feel the difference between the septuplets and the quintuplets. It's just a lot of just slowing it down and feeling practice. So like for what I do a lot in this kind of stuff is I do thumping. So for the groupings of 2, I usually just do down up on my thumb. And then for groupings of 3, I go down, up, pluck. And then for groupings of 4, I go down, up, pluck, pluck. So it's different muting hits into it. So I usually go, like for the first part, it's down, up, down, up, down, up, pluck, down, up, down, up, pluck, down, up, pluck, down, up, down, up, pluck. And then for the second part, it's down, up, pluck, down, up, pluck, down, up, pluck, pluck, down, up, pluck, down, up, pluck, down, up, pluck, pluck, down, up, pluck, pluck, down, up, down, up, pluck, down, up, pluck, pluck. Yeah, say that 5 times fast. But yeah, so it's a cool thing where like I feel like as a bass player, I'm usually not playing melody, but I can do these kind of weird accents and make it a little bit more groovy while still being able to use the techniques that I've been working on and that I enjoy using within my own songwriting, but still have it be interesting. But yes, that's kind of what I've been working on recently. A lot of the people that inspired me to do this kind of stuff, I said it earlier, but Tigran Hamasyan, I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. There's a band called Victoria, and it's this guitar player. His name is Josh as well. It's Josh De La Victoria. And the drummer is Matt Gartzka, who's in a bunch of different projects. Animals as Leaders is one of them. But they do this kind of stuff a lot. There's Kazimir Lubersky is another piano player that does stuff like this. And if you listen to the project Gem, that has the bass player from Dirty Loops, Matt Gartzka again, and I forget the piano player's name, but they'll do this where they go between quintuplets into septuplets a lot, and they'll go back and forth. But yeah, that's what I got. That's what I was telling Mike when we were talking over about me coming on. When I was first trying to explore this stuff, I had no idea what was going on. And if you ever seen the picture of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, where he's like, I don't need sleep, I need answers. That was me for like 3 freaking weeks of trying to figure out what is going on. Well, eventually I did it. So, and it's pretty easy. It's a simple ratio, and then you multiply that over to whatever it is. And you can do the opposite where like, if you want to go, like we'll do an example of like, if we want to go from this grouping of 5 to a grouping of 3, what you would end up doing is you would do 3 divided by 5, which is 0.6, and then you multiply that by the original tempo, which is 145. So to have a grouping of 3 take up the same space as these groupings and as the 7 groupings, it would be 87 BPM. And say you want to go really dumb, like the one I was working on, it's a 7 to 11 for good old Adam Neely. Never finished working on it, but you do 11 divided by 7, and then the original tempo was like 148. So then the new tempo would be that number. And honestly, after you get past like a decimal point or two, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. I feel like if you don't have at least the first decimal point, it's a little noticeable. But yeah, and there's some people like Victoria, they'll do this a lot where if they'll go from 5 into 7, they'll do a polyrhythm the couple measures beforehand of 5 against 7. I'm not great at it, and so that's the reason I usually do the hard cut, but that's something that I've been trying to work on as well. So you gotta get those nice cups of teas and pass the goddamn butter as well. So yeah, that's what I got. So yeah, thank you for having me on and being able to talk about all the weirdness I've been delving into in the past couple months.
Thank you for sharing all the weirdness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad, was it? We thought we were going to be doing like calculus, but yeah, that was mostly understandable, but definitely really interesting how you can get different like feelings out of purely changing the meter. I really liked the section that you described that went into 7, and it was very like you said, it was like wavy and like, where am I? And I totally agreed. Like, that's exactly how I felt when I listened to it. And you did not change the harmony at all. It was purely rhythm, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like can definitely be explored more. And I like using it kind of as like you're saying, as like a tension and release, because that's what harmony. I always look at harmony as tension and release, or if it's like a pad or anything like that. There's definitely like a point to it, and I feel like you can do that with rhythm concepts as well. And get the same effect in a completely different way. So I'm also not the greatest at harmony, so you gotta play to your strengths.
Thank you so much, Josh. We're we're going to move on to James now. I believe James may go a little bit more into this harmonic stuff that we've been talking about. But yeah, go ahead, James. Introduce yourself and show us what you got.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, cool, wonderful. So thanks for having me. Oh, my phone thinks I'm. All right, okay. My phone, it was doing the okay, the words, anyway, sorry. So I have a project called Winter Parks. It's pretty much just a solo project. It's my little like playground sandbox to type into, just do whatever I want to do, arrangement wise or composition wise. Um, and with that, I feel like in the 6 or 7 years that I've been recording tunes and recording songs and little ideas and things is there's like a couple different things that I feel like I've run into as arrangement tools, arrangement ideas, arrangement tricks, production tricks, different types of things. So what I wanted to do today was just like go through a couple of my songs that I'm working on and just give you the lowdown. So I didn't know that Zoom had a screen share feature, so I like went and put all this time into like figuring out how to like do this and get a little bit of Ableton on the screen for you. But but I
Grant,
think
can we spotlight James so that he pops up nice and big?
Yeah, one sec.
I knew that was like a premium feature of sorts, so I didn't know if that was something you guys could do or not. But while they are figuring that out, I guess I'll talk a little bit about this song. So this song that I'm about to show you is let's see. I wonder what instrument I wrote this song on. I want to say I wrote this on guitar, and I wanted, as we go along, I wanted to think of different examples of how production itself can be used as an instrument because in today's music, well, let me start by saying in like the 60s and the 70s, our primary instrumentation was actual instruments and blah blah blah, those types of things, whereas now we have a situation where some vague sound that we can't tangibly describe is the focal point of a recording or um, of a song, and you might think to yourself, you're like, oh, I that one song that's like, oh wait, I actually don't know how it goes because I can't emulate that sound with my voice type of vibe. So it's like we have that going on. Production nowadays is not only getting your track to sound as good as you can get it to sound, blah 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 blah, but it's also an instrument in its own self. People say like, "Oh, is mayonnaise an instrument? Is the MacBook an instrument?" Well, yes, the MacBook is an instrument. In fact, oh, cool. There we go. So, with that being said, I have this track here that I am working on, and I'm just going to go through some things. The main feature of this track, I'll just play it actually. I don't want to talk too much. So.
We can't hear your mic,
Yeah,
James.
yeah, I just figured that out. So that's called Pause Again. And that whole one, that song there, I wanted to start by saying that the initial idea was actually like a production idea per se. And that idea being there's a little, let me see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. Uh, this vocal track here. This vocal track here. That's pretty much it. And the whole idea being, oh, we have a quarter note, so we have a quarter note, so we have a quarter note, so we have 4 quarter notes, we have 8 eighth notes, obviously. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, I got this thing that's on the quarter note, and then I have space in between every one of those. And then I was like, I could just have an echo, and it would be like, I don't know. So pretty much that's the idea. The point that I was getting at with that is that that was a seed, that was a production based seed that had nothing, that had no grounding in a physical instrument other than like my voice. And that was the seed for the song, that was the initial idea, and from there I made the song. So it's like if I had not had the idea to do something production related, I don't think I would have had the idea at all. So, anyway, I don't know if I articulated that idea in the best way possible, but moving on. So, I wanted to talk about different arrangement things that we can do. Josh, I liked a lot of the ideas that you were talking about in your tracks too. That was cool. So especially the thing with recording the drums and having that extra mic come in to change the sonic space that the drums are in during a different section of the song. That's like, I feel like that's subtle. Those are subtle mixing and record producing things that I feel like are overlooked. I'll be listening to a track in my car for days and days on end, and then I'll listen to it on my studio monitors, and I'll be like, "Wow, that hi hat's like panning left and right," and I never noticed it. Stuff like that. So little things like that are really helpful to keep in mind. Like play with your spatial, your space. Pretty much, you want to make sure you're panning things unusually. This is kind of an old project, so I feel like, yeah, for sure. This is kind of an old project, so I feel like I didn't open my eyes to the panning thing by the time I was making this. But so I wanted to do a little instrument breakdown here of these two different sections. Um, so we this is pretty much just the A B song format here. We have the I can't put my life on pause again. So we have that part, and then we have the part that's bum, 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 yeah. I forgot. This can be finicky for sure. So as far as the instrumentation goes for these two parts, what I wanted to do is have two different rooms. I see this in a lot of music. I think of like John Mayer. I don't know why I thought of John Mayer, but he seems to do this a lot in his bridges, where you'll have this whole idea going for the entire extent of the song, and then in his bridge he'll go and he'll do a chord or do a chord progression that's different, something that's stepping into a different room, and you can feel it in the way that the music is. And I kind of had the idea of doing that with this track too, and having two different rooms, having this kind of open room that is like just, I'm speaking to you. And then there's a second room where, oh, there's this big cacophony of whatever is happening around you. And the voice is meant to be like kind of yelling through that. I'd really like to play this part of the song right here, but I'm afraid that my computer is going to just like give me it's really going to stick it to me. So I'm going to start freezing. I'm going to start freezing these tracks. And in the meantime, I'm using my audio from my DAW, so you can't hear it right now, but hopefully you can hear me right now. So pretty much what's happening is most DAWs have this feature. I don't know if y'all know about this, but in Ableton they have it, and it essentially it's bouncing in place. It's the same thing in other DAWs, bouncing in place, which is essentially it takes. Oh, there I am. Essentially, it takes the. Sorry if I scared you. Essentially, it takes the CPU. It takes some power off your CPU so you can do more things. I don't know if that made a difference or not. I am also trying to fix my camera at the same time, so I apologize for the scatteredness. But let's see, is that gonna do it? Yeah, nice. Okay. So let's see if this works now. All right. So I don't think that's gonna work. I'm just gonna show you the track itself. See if that works. Oh, I really might have. Oh no, I got it right here. I got it right here. All right. Well, let's see if this plays for you, and let me know if you can't hear it in a second once I find it. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe I don't. Yeah, maybe I can't find it. Well, anyway, the point that I was getting at is two different rooms. Yeah, so that's pretty much the idea that I was going for there. I can go to the other section of the song here. I just don't I don't want to have dead air, you know. I can't put my life on pause. I can't figure it out. So for okay. So for this one, the whole situation here is switching basses. Switching basses is a good way to do that. I have a couple other songs that I'm working on where the bass goes from like an acoustic bass to like an 808 bass, for example. So let me find the other bass here. Yep. All right. So, and then we have this other bass. Dude, I don't know if you can hear how bad that sounds right now, but like, wow.
We can hear it.
I wish I could change.
If you up your buffer size, that should fix it.
Yeah,
Because right now
that's
it's
what
pretty
I'm
low.
trying to do, but it literally doesn't want to, like, literally right here where it says Studio 1824C would be where my buffer controls are, but for whatever reason,
Do you have a bounce of this track somewhere that you
that's
can pull up?
that's what I was trying to that's what I was trying to look for, but yeah,
It might just be because the DAW is open and it doesn't want to change.
That could be it too. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's weird that the actual controls aren't there. But while I'm doing this, let me see. Okay. You're probably only hearing this in your left ear right now, so I apologize for that if you're wearing headphones. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and freeze these tracks again. I figure, so I have a couple different plugins here. I saw you were using Waves plugins. Waves plugins are dope. I love Waves plugins, and I be using them for pretty much everything. I'm using them for mixing and like creatively too. The thing I've been using most, yes, I do. You want to go on to Instagram, winterparks_. There's no spaces. And then on Bandcamp, it's winterparksmusic.bandcamp.com. Yeah, I would appreciate all the follows and yes, and Spotify as well. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm actually putting together a 5-track John, for those watching in the future or in the past or right now, putting together a 5-track EP. That's supposed to come out in December. So there's really nothing on Spotify right now, but there will be eventually, is my hope. You know how that goes is you always run into a situation where you're like, all right, I have these 5 songs and I'm so ready. And then you write all these other songs. And then you're like, well, now I have these 5 songs and these 2 songs that are better than these 5 songs. So what do I do, you know? And I feel like that pretty much, I don't know. I feel like that just goes around in circles. Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. If it doesn't work this time, then I think that is divine intervention. That is quite terrible. So what I'm gonna do is this. All right, so now I'm just gonna switch to a new project, just because this guy's just really giving me the shtick here. I don't know what's happening. Really giving it to me. So here we go. All right. So I just was gonna say a couple other things. As Josh, you were presenting, I was just thinking of other things that I could talk about, or other useful bits of information. So basic mixing things and just basic things. So right now I have a audio track here. This is actually my voice. So I'm gonna throw EQ on there. Like I said, just basic things. I figured I'd cover this, but when I'm mixing on my tracks, you want to make sure you go and you throw a high pass on literally everything. And it's not that you have to, but it's always a good rule of thumb to take out those low, muddy frequencies, because you never know what is lurking down there, essentially. So you want to do that, and if you have like 50 tracks in your John, then all that is going to add up in your low frequencies. I feel like that happens a lot in drums. I feel like that happens in everything. Right now, I'm just going to throw together a quick little. This is my lead vocal chain. If I had to go through and make a lead vocal chain right now, I'd pop a hard compressor on there. Ooh. Really compress that. And then, gotta redo that. Really compress that. Then make it maybe like 20%, maybe 20% wet. So we have a big thick muff sitting under the surface, and we can borrow from it, but we have this shape and the character of an uncompressed vocal. I mean, for the most part, depends on how you play with the knobs, and I keep doing this. It depends on how you're playing with the knobs and like what you're doing with it and what your personal feel is. So I'm trying to add in a second compressor that I'm put before this one, and this one's just going to be my makeshift transient designer per se, and we take the attack as fast as it can. So when I go pop, it's not gonna sound like something is like hurting you if you have this boosted through a full mix. So this, I don't know. I was in the studio at the Sugar Tank the other day and talking to the engineer, and he was just talking about investing in analog equipment and things of the such. And one of the analog things that he had mentioned investing in was the transient designer. And really what the transient designer is, if you do your research, is it's just like a compressor, essentially. And that's just taking your transients, your attack of the note, if you don't know what that means, and cuts it off, essentially, or brings it down to the point where you're not getting attacked by it, I guess. So anyway, I have this here. I said I like to use Waves plugins. It's different for everyone, but for this guy, if I'm doing a nice pop lead vocal, I like to throw in my my Waves tune. Put that in the beginning here. So people always be talking about, do you want compressor or do you want EQ first? Again, that's like a taste thing. The way I see it is that if I have a compressor here, and this could also be me looking at the screen too, but if I EQ, I high pass this out, and then I'm compressing, I feel like I'm gonna still see some like low frequencies down here after I've compressed it, and then I want to like cut those out again. Or what I could do is compress it first and then cut those frequencies out. So it sounds different. It saves you steps, sort of, but it's also a taste thing and an ear thing. So say I'm writing a track and I got my track going, I'm doing my thing, and let's see what time I got. All right. And I'm doing my thing. So Mike was talking about harmony. So I got my Lounge Lizard up here, which is my go-to electric piano. And I got my patch on here. So when I'm working with the auto-tune, obviously you have to set the key signature to the proper thing. So if I sing a flat B flat, if I sing a B flat, well, I guess it's still going to try and push me. It's still going to glitch out. But essentially, it's going to push you to here instead of there. It's just not going to go there. But so I'll be throwing that on. I'll be throwing on a pretty quick auto tune. So with Waves real time, note transition is your actual speed. So if you're going for that T-Pain effect, and then the speed is the speed that is actually processing the audio and determining like how periodically it's determining what pitch is going on. Correction, you can turn that down a little bit if you're looking for a nice natural sound. If you're trying to do something that sounds natural, and don't get me wrong, they be putting auto-tune on everything, so even things that sound like it's like recorded in like a natural, like earthy, organic space. It's like I'm sure there's still going to be some auto-tune on that. Like you can't even, I don't know. So anyway, so I got my auto-tune, and that's what I like to do for lead vocals. So let me explain everything of what I'm doing here. Oh, and one last thing, of course. Usually pop that de-esser on there. There's a preset for male S, which I mean everybody's, I guess it's at a different frequency. Tracks sound off if they aren't tuned correct. So if for people that know the mechanism of auto-tune, we're just in this case I kind of have the T-Pain thing going on, but what I'm gonna do is bring this up to like 30. This I know for my voice is different for everybody's voice, but I know my voice, this is about a good spot for it to be sounding natural. But then and while I'm here, I might as well give you the old Travis Scott. See if I can find it here. Travis Scott. Okay, we got an A minor pentatonic. Yeah. All right. We got that. We got that Travis Scott. Oh, is it not working? I'm trying to do the Travis Scott. So essentially what he's doing is he's taking a pentatonic scale and he's auto-tuning it really tightly. So everything is like I don't know if it's working, but he's auto-tuning it really tightly to a pentatonic scale. So when he's doing that, yeah, and it's lit, like all of that is just pentatonic scale auto-tuning straight up. But anyway, going back to my other point that I wanted to get at here, is kick drum and bass and things that are going against the kick drum and things that are going with the kick drum. By this, I mean, there's a lot of different options you can do thinking in terms of rhythm section. I play bass, I play guitar, I play drums, so I'm trying to dip my toes into everything. So what I want to do here is just get a little drum loop going to show you kind of what I'm talking about. I don't know if I'll do this fast enough, but we'll see. turn that metronome off. Okay, so now we're thinking as a bass player, we're looking at the kick drum here, and we have a 4 on the floor, so that's just like 4 quarter notes on the floor, 4 kick drum quarter notes. And so the thing that I was getting at is, as a bass player and as someone who's in the rhythm section, we can do a bunch of different things with this. We can either play on the beat, or we can play around the beat. We can do a bunch of different things. So I'll show you my Waves plugin. I'll show you my, hold on, I gotta get the auto-tune off my voice, bro. I'll show you my Waves plugin, Shane, for the bass, which is super, super simple, honestly. I use the Kramer tape. And I go to their bass preset. Sorry, I'm clipping. I go to clean bass DI, and I turn the noise down. So anyway, we can play on the beat. Or we can play kind of around the beat. So I'd be thinking about we can play around the beat. So I can be thinking about bass lines that are kind of dodging the quarter note. So think about Use, or is it Use Me? No, I'm thinking of a Rolling Stone song. So when we're thinking about that from a theoretical standpoint, we're just playing eighth notes, and yeah, we're playing on the bass, we're playing on the downbeat, but thinking about this from an aesthetic point of view, we're accenting these notes in between the kick drums, so we're going boom, bop, boom, bop, boom, bop, bop, boom, bop. So we're kind of drawing the ear to those points in between the kick drum. So I feel like the mechanism of that bass line, that kind of like I feel like for that first half there, you're kind of staying on the beat. You're going and you're trying to stay on the beat, but then in the second half, you're kind of dancing around the beat. I mean, you're playing on the beat in this specific example, but the idea that I'm trying to communicate is that we can play on either sides of it. So for a little while, we can be on the beat. We can be doing stuff on the beat, and then we can go off the beat. So I'm gonna try and think of something. So yeah, so I'll be going like. So you take that, put that together. So the idea that I was kind of going for was, first half we're on the beat, you know, boom, 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 and then we're syncopated in the second half. So I'm just taking that arrangement idea and doing something with it. The arrangement idea being that we can juxtapose things around the kick drum or around whatever you want to call it, the root accent, the beat, the pulse. Maybe not the pulse if we're talking like, if we're trying to be real technical about what all the terms are. But so And then as we're arranging and we're producing, we can take that a step further and we can look for the space in between the drums and the bass. So what do we have? We have what do we have? Let's find out. Let's listen to it. So for this one, I almost actually want to kind of just take the keyboard and have it follow what the bass is doing there and there, there and there, and then. So I'm thinking because we have that all that on down on the beat type stuff in the first half, we have that bum 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 bum. I can juxtapose myself on top of that, and we can be like bum bum, and I can go bum 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 bum. So just kind of creating another rhythmic layer, more rhythmic depth. I guess I don't know. Let's find out how that sounds. Using this idea, it's just all juxtaposing. I'm trying to just juxtapose rhythms here and bring some awareness and mindfulness to this. I'm in the wrong key. So what am I doing wrong? Yeah, it kind of has like a little bit of a disco thing happening. Let's see here. So I feel like now would be the point in the creative process when I start to be like, okay, well, I have my drums, which I know my kick and my snare have to go down the center. My bass, which I feel like probably has to go down the center as well. But then I'll start to think, okay, well, I have my electric piano that I just recorded. I can go ahead and pan that over pretty generously all the way over to the left or something, for example. And then I want to start thinking, okay, well, now I have all this space over on the right side. How am I going to fill that out? And then you guessed it, I'm going to try and come up with a part that is rhythmically juxtaposed to the keyboard part. And so that's just going to keep happening over and over again until I have a loop going. And then the goal is to try and get out of that loop. So I'm not building vertically, but I'm building horizontally. I would totally go into a whole thing on like the tricks behind like trying to take something that you're building vertically and try and build it out horizontally. But I was like, man, I think that's just like a creative flow thing. Like if you aren't in the flow to like if you've been working on this loop for like 40 minutes and you're like, all right, I got this keyboard part that sounds sick, I'm gonna add in this like little triangle. Oh wow, that sounds so good. Like then you got this part that's built up, but then the more that you add to that part, the less you can possibly conceive what you're going to do after that. So I feel like my solutions to that really will be similar to a lot of things. You just got to step away. You got to just step away from it. And I feel like for me, sometimes what I'll be doing is I'll just go, if I have this one loop, I'll be like, okay, I have this loop. If I can't come up with anything else, then that's fine. I'm not going to beat myself up over it, but I'm going to go and I'm going to listen to this. And I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to stop it at the end of the loop. And hopefully it gets stuck in my head. Hopefully it gets stuck in my head. And then if it gets stuck in my head at that point, I can be like, all right, how is this? This is in my head right now. How is it mutating as I'm not paying attention to it? So I feel like a lot of the time I'll have an idea going in my head, like I'll wake up or something and it's just going, it's going. And I'll be like, oh, I could tap into that and put that on the voice recorder or not. But then if I have an ongoing idea that I'm working on a song or something and I listen to a bounce in the car or something, it's going to be floating around my head, and then at that point it's pretty much just in there. It's in the gel, you know. It's gonna go in whichever direction it's gonna go. I just have to let it be there. And I feel like things that I can't intentionally or in the now be able to push forward in a horizontal direction and move it out in terms of time rather than layering the instruments. I feel like the best thing that I can do to get past that creative block per se is just to let that piece of music sit there and marinate in my head, and then I just will trust that eventually I come up with something to it. And that's, of course, you have to put in the effort to do that, and you do have to do a little bit of, okay, well, I was thinking about this track and what can I do to add to this? I still don't know. I'm just going to go and play it for like 30 seconds to see if anything new comes up. And it's all about maximizing your opportunities. I feel like it's a game of numbers. So for writing songs, you want to have your voice recorder. Like, you just want to have that voice recorder like it's right on my home screen. Anytime I got an idea, I feel like I want to record that because that could be a good idea. You don't know, like, you don't even know what ideas are good to you. And so I feel like if you record everything, then you can go back later and you can be like, oh, this sounds good objectively from several months later because I'm not hearing it in the now. And I can be like, oh, this voice recording sounds good. You know, I'm surprised I didn't work on this already, etc., etc. But it's about maximizing the chances and getting as much of that raw material out from inside your head. I feel like this is more of a philosophical thing, but as an artist, I feel like there's a what's the word? There, not a priority, like a responsibility, kind of like a responsibility to take all this stuff that's floating around in your head and transcribe it out into the world. If you're creative, if you're musically creative, like if you want to be making things, if your calling is to transcribe things or do something else, then I mean, I'm sure there's a philosophical equivalent of that. I don't know. But yeah, so pretty much as far as this goes, I'm definitely always trying to maximize my chances here and try and write as much as possible. Try to do everything, one thing a day if you can. And you really gotta, like, if you're trying, I don't know how many of you are trying to be producers, if you're looking at this afterwards, or anyone here, like, I feel like if you're trying to be a producer, you gotta, that's like the instrument in itself, like I said before, like, and that's something you have to practice every day. I don't know, we got some crazy producers in the area. I think of one person, honestly, when I think of someone that I kind of aspire towards, at least on a local level of producing. Brandon Shoup, he worked on, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Madison Ryan music. Lynx, he did a couple songs with Lynx as well. And he does his own stuff. But him as a producer, you can tell he's put in so many hours into just figuring out what sounds good, how to get things to sound good. And that is all part of the game here. If you're trying to be a producer or you're trying to make tracks sound good. Do my tracks sound good? Oh man, I don't know. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm trying to find the balance between this is a craft and this is a skill that if I want to make a song that sounds like I'm going to the beach or something, then I should be able to set out and do that as a producer with my toolbox of tools. But then also, I'm going to say, as an artist, when I'm creating, I might make this choice instead of taking the more commercially viable choice, for example. So say someone says, oh, make this song that's like a banger, like your pop banger. I'll be like, I'm making this track, but I don't know if I'm gonna put in that like cheesy like pad synth. I might actually put in like an acoustic guitar. Those small choices like that, I feel like are the things. I was watching like a mixing and mastering masterclass, and he was talking about how those types of choices are, Tony Maserati. He was talking about how those types of choices, those creative choices where you say, well, I would have normally done this, but I think I'm going to do this. Actually, I'm going to make this choice. And the more choices that you can make like that, and the more that you can experiment, keyword experiment, the more that you can experiment, the more raw information you have to experiment with, then the more successful you're going to be. If your definition of success is like, as a producer, is being able to go out and make the track that you want, that you envision, if you have it in your head, that you hear it, and being able to go out and get that sound, like, as a creator, you know. So yeah, anyway, I just kind of went on a little tangent there, but that's just my 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 perspectives on that. And yeah, I mean, if you're creating, you just want to be doing that every day. And as I feel like all of you guys are doing that, I see you guys out here working too, so that's great. And I'm out here working too. I'm just like got a couple things down the pipeline. I'll do some plugs here. So a band that I'm in, No Bad Days, we are currently working on an album, 5 tracks. It's an EP. So that I'm producing that and mixing that. So that is something that I'm trying to work on right now. And I'm working on my own EP. So that last band, again, that's No Bad Days. I'm sure y'all are familiar, or at least some of you are. And then my own project again is Winter Parks. So, and I'm coming out with the album hopefully at the end of December with that. And yeah, so I guess that's my spiel, TDLR. Just play with the spaces when you're producing. Try and make some bold choices. Do things that you wouldn't, expect to do. Make sure you high pass everything. Put that filter on every track in your session. I mean, even if it's a hi-hat or a tambourine, there's probably some low frequencies down there lurking around. But anyway, so yeah, thanks for having me on. So I feel like that brings me to the end of what I tried to prepare. Sorry, my computer wasn't, working there. I couldn't find a way to change the bit rate, but yeah, it was still fun either way. And I hope at least some of the things or anything I said could be of some use to anyone who's watched this. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, James. That got pretty deep there for a second. But that was good. That was really good stuff. I liked the tangent. It was a good tangent for sure. I think that was some of the most useful stuff we've heard in like any of these sessions. So thank you for going on that rabbit hole, because it was useful for sure. I think we're ready to move on to just a Q&A section of this meeting, to sort of round out the last half hour or so. So I do have some questions here ready to go, and this is going to be directed at either James or Josh. So whoever feels like answering them first can go right on ahead. But my first question here is just, how can arrangement be used to create emotions or energy in a track?
I feel like, I don't know, that's kind of how I usually go around, just creating emotion and energy, is seeing kind of like at what the bare minimum what you're going for, and kind of building off of that. So, if I have a part where I want it to, defy the listener's expectations, trying to use your sonic palette as well as, maybe different instruments or, different production techniques to make that happen. Yeah. So like if you're, if you want something, you're going from really soft to really heavy, changing the room sound or changing the timbre, whatever instrument you're working on, and kind of using those ideas along with maybe building some extra harmony up top or making something like, I love crunchiness. So just having harmony that's like really, really crunchy and just like a smack in the face. To make, you want to, bring the listener along with that journey and kind of go along that way. So that's how I feel like using kind of all those different techniques that, both me and James have kind of talked about going through, to make the listener feel that. And some listeners may not, and they may feel something different, and that's perfectly fine as well, as long as they enjoy it.
Cool. Anything else to add to that, James?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I actually don't. I felt like that was a pretty thorough answer. I guess if anything, I would say like, for me, like, arranging I guess in my definition of arranging, I guess would be just like, arranging is like the on the spot real time direction of what is happening in your track or what the musicians are doing. Oh, someone's calling me. Sorry. So is what the musicians are doing, and so I think how can we use arranging to create emotion and feel? One of the very first things that my mind goes to is classical music and how ingrained and like intentional that tends to be with having orchestrated and very arranged music conveying specific emotions. So I guess to answer the question, like, how can it be? How can you convey emotion with it? I feel like arranging is the tool in which we can use to create emotions, and it's kind of a back and forth in between the sounds, the instruments, and the feelings that we're using, and the way that we arrange them. That is going to create those feelings, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. So what you're basically getting at is that arrangement is like how you manipulate the emotional impact of a track. That like arrangement is that tool that you use to shape the emotional effect that you're trying to have.
Yeah, and that can go as far as like arranging musicians saying, "Oh, these cellos play this note here," or arranging. I also think, from the producer's standpoint of like, this cutoff filter is going up here to do this or something. I don't know. Like the drums are being filtered out, for example. That I feel like is also under the arrangement umbrella as far as that goes.
Awesome. So my next question here, James, you already kind of mentioned how you have to put in the hours of practice in order to really get good at producing and arranging. But I just wanted to ask how you've gone about developing your arranging skills over time.
So this goes into a whole other thing too, is like I feel like the one of the most important things as a musician, of course, is listening to things and analytically listening, and you don't have to do that all the time. I feel like I am cursed with this whole situation where it's like I can't just sit there and listen to a song. I have to like analyze it unless I'm like really drunk or something, and I'm just, but so like basically the whole thing is it comes down to, I feel like it comes down to listening. So a lot of the thing for me would be I would listen to other tracks and I would be like, "Oh, that's a cool idea," or "Look at how that bass is doing this with the kick drum," or something like that, for example. But how I developed that skill, I guess, is just like practicing all those things, trying all those things out. A lot of skills I think that come as a composer or arranger come from composing and arranging. Whether that be through like using Guitar Pro. I know for a couple of years I used Guitar Pro 5 to make all my arrangements. Um, and then afterwards I just started doing everything like right on the page per se. So instead of worrying about notes and music notes and the tablet and the sheets and everything, I just like would go and record whatever the idea is that I had, and then essentially my score would be the project file. And so that was the thing, and I would do that for a while, Guitar Pro, that is, and then I switched over to actually like arranging, like actually making tracks like in the DAW, and doing it that way. And I feel like that's really the way that you do it, is you just do it as much as you can. And like I said, I feel like I try, like, I know I was reading a thing with Kevin Parker, Tame Impala. He's talking about how it's like an addiction for him to go and just record his own music whenever he can, even if he's in other bands or whatever. And for me, it's a very similar thing. So it's like I'd be like, I don't know, I just be like stressed out or something, and then I'll go and like make a track, because like what else am I gonna do? It's the perfect thing. Like, I don't know. So it comes down to the whole commitment, daily commitment type of thing, where if you want to get good at it, then you gotta then you gotta then you gotta put time into it every day.
Josh, you have anything else to add to that?
Not really. I think I do want to stress the point of listening. Because that was definitely a big breakthrough for me, as well as just doing your own research. Because you should, yeah, I'm assuming most people watching this are in school, and like, obviously following your classes and learning all that, but also making time for yourself to do the things you're interested in as well. Um, I came in with very little knowledge of any sort of production or any sort of theory as well. It was just something I kind of fell in love with and would really do deep dives into. Um, but yeah, kind of taking what James was saying, like listening, analytically listening to something and figuring out why you like it, or listen to music you don't like and figure out why you don't like it is also a very valuable thing. Of like, I know for me, and this is my personal preference. I really don't like country that much. It's just no, not for me. But I listened to it and I appreciated the things I did like about it, like the artistry behind the songwriting, and how they craft their lyrics and that kind of stuff. And then like the other things I didn't like about it would be I'm just not a fan of that timbre of singing. Um, but trying to force yourself to listen to other genres, like I'm in a deep dive of drum and bass music right now, which I've never listened to before, and trying to figure out what I like about it and what I don't like about it, is I think a really valuable skill to do. And just have fun, honestly. Just like, as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, and you can show up every day and do the work for it and still enjoy it, I think that's very good.
Yeah, I agree. It's not all work. You got to play a little bit too. That's really what it's all about at the end of the day. It's having fun. Next question I have, it's kind of open-ended, but do you have any fun arrangement tricks that you like to use? Like smaller, subtle things that you like to throw in that might have a bigger effect than one would assume they would have?
Yeah, definitely. Doing little, even if it's just like a pad of a note or something, and kind of adding that in, or like a tambourine at some point, just little things you can kind of throw in that, if you were to show someone the song, they definitely wouldn't notice it. But if you would take it away and mute it, um, it sounds like there's something missing. And I think that was always the test for me for doing those little tricks of, oh, I'm going to add this part in, or I'm going to drown this in reverb and reverse it. So it's more of a textural thing rather than like functioning. And I'd listen through, I'd have that part on loop, and then I would listen to it with it and then without it and see if there's missing something. And then I'd grab, whoever I was living with at the time, I'd come in and be like, hey, turn around real quick. And I'd flip it on and off and say, do you feel anything different when it's, when it's not there? And, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And it might be, a matter of personal preference of like, I feel like it adds something, so I'm going to put it in. But more often than not, I think you'll find that if you show someone something and you have that little extra thing in and you take it out, they'd be like, oh yeah, no, it sounds like something's missing, but I can't put my finger on it. I love doing that kind of stuff. And yeah, like adding wind to a very cheesy bridge like that. I can't take that out.
Cool. Yeah. James, do you have any tips or tricks that you like to throw in?
Yes, I do. So something that, and this is just like a small little thing, but I just like to different ways of thickening or adding effects, or adding different types of essentially just like adding effects and thickening vocals and making vocals more interesting in a mix. So I got an example for you. 3, 2, 1. Check. Where are you? You are right. I see. There we are. My volume was down. Okay. So one thing that I like to do just to add a little bit of spice to some vocal tracks is a tape delay. So So what I got here is this is a tape delay, and we can do this with any type of delay. Essentially, what you're going for is a super short delay, not something too short though. Otherwise, it's gonna sound, I feel like, gross in my opinion. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. So let me find a good spot where this would sound good. Yeah. So without that effect on there, I guess I have to figure out which one's the lead vocal. It's this one. This is lead vocal. Without that effect on there, it sounds, I mean, it doesn't sound bad, but it just sounds a little bland, and I feel like there's definitely room for effect or spice, you know.
Oh yeah, say, just ignore me, so I'll be left unread. So come all these visions of what's wrong with what I see.
So there's there, and then there's.
Can't imagine how you can see what's left. Circling my feelings, praying.
So that right there is just the dry vocal. But what we can do is we can
Say, just ignore me, so I'll be left unread.
So we have just the vocal.
All these visions of what's wrong with what I said. On the floor we can pretend there's no regrets. So come all these feelings.
So the way that I kind of describe this effect is it's almost like a 70s vintage kind of slapback kind of tone. And I'd be putting this, typically what I'd be doing is taking a send, putting it in a send, and then just sending a bunch of things to it. So I really like drums in there. I have it on the drums here too. Let's find the drums. So on the drums as well. This is without. And this is with. So for me, I feel like that's just like a little trick. And you're probably wondering, oh, well, I'm just turning one knob. Like, what am I doing? Well, specifically what is happening here is there's a cyc delay is like, it's meant to be like a tape delay. And there's two different sounds. So it's like you have the initial sound like ba, and then most delays it's like ba, 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 ba. But then this one's more of like a ba, 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 ba. So it's like, it's rhythmic, but it's like a dotted quarter note type vibe. But with that being real short and with having some feedback on there, just is kind of giving this little shake, you know. And we can do this with the stock delay. You can do this with the delay in Logic or anything. So I can do that right now. I'll just do that super quick. I'm going to take the simple delay in Ableton. So we kind of get like a sort of similar feeling, but the whole thing is like, that's a pretty simple idea. You want to throw a delay onto something, give it a little spice, give it a little bit of character. That's pretty much the TDLR there. So yeah.
That's really cool. I've never seen a delay used like that before. And pretty cool how quick you can just throw it on and it makes such a huge difference too.
Yeah, it's a real hack. It's like a cheat code.
Yeah, it's super quick and easy, but it makes a big difference. Another question I have for you is, what are some of the main challenges that you run into as they pertain to arranging or part writing? What kind of like roadblocks do you run into? Again, James, you kind of went into this a little bit, but what kind of roadblocks do you run into? What kind of problems come up when you're in the process of writing these parts or arranging your songs?
Do I answer this?
It's for either of you.
Okay, I'll start. I guess I'll start. So yeah, I guess the biggest like roadblocks slash annoying things that will happen is we be writing these parts. You know, we got these two parts and they're happening and it sounds good. Everything sounds good, and you're going to mix it and suddenly you're wondering, ah man, why is this vocal just not sitting the way that it should on top of these instrumentals? Or I feel like for me, a lot of the biggest things that will happen is typically when I'm making tracks or whatever, writing the parts, we're thinking producing and arranging two in one. So we're thinking, how can we get these parts to sound good as we're adding them? I'm not going to write a keys part that's big and clunky and it's going to take up 90% of the sonic space before I even have 4 tracks in my song. So, unless that's what I want to do. But the point that I'm getting at is, yeah, so even when we don't, even in situations where I might not, so basically what I'm saying is, even in situations where I can be sparing with the way that I'm arranging something, there might still be a lack of clarity in the mix that becomes so vague that you can't really tell where that is coming from. And it starts with, you know, going down each track and trying to figure out, well, are there frequencies ringing here or what is competing? And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you're arranging and you've tried everything you can and you're just stuck because these things, it's not the way that this track sounds as it is not how you want it to sound because of like these small things. And it's the threshold between a track being finished and all those small things being taken care of and all those small things still being a problem. That's a very delicate thing, and I feel like that is something that you just got to go in for hours and try and get all those things out if you have those problems. That comes down to a mixing thing. So if you're not the best mixer, like I'm not that great at mixing, so I feel like that is harder for me, at least, is even if I have this track where I'm like, wow, all these parts fit together nicely musically and even sonically, it's like there's still something, you know, still something that could be better, I guess. And that isn't even like oh, this is never going to be done because it could always be better, but it's more of like literally this just doesn't sound how I want it to and I have no idea how to get it there type of vibe. So that's a roadblock. As to getting over that roadblock, I think we can really, the only way is to invite new perspectives and try and get new ideas when you're mixing. And that means like talking to other people, showing the tracks to other people that mix, other people that are making music, being like, hey, what do you know what's going on here? Because I don't, you know, that type of thing. So reaching out to the people around you in your community or whatever. And if you can't do that, then I guess just put more time into it until it works.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably a good time to call up some of your non-musician friends and have them listen, because chances are they're not going to notice the thing that is driving you insane, literally. And like, you, at the end of the day, unless you're making music for musicians specifically, like that's your mission, like generally you're making it for the population at large, which is mostly not musicians. So yeah, I agree. You always got to bring in a fresh set of ears if you're running into something really frustrating. But what about you, Josh? Do you have any stories, struggles, times of hardship in the arranging process?
All the time. I find the biggest problem for me is I tend to, if I really latch on to a concept or a idea that I've been working on, I'll do that over and over again too much. Um, like when I first started trying to explore different modes and that kind of stuff and like modal interchange. I really like Phrygian dominant. I kind of found that out. And so for literally like 3 months, all I wrote, it came out as Phrygian dominant. Even if I didn't mean to. Like I'd start writing like a riff or something and part like a drum beat behind it. I'm like, damn, this sounds nasty. Let's keep going with this. And then I'm like, it's freaking Phrygian dominant again. Um, and it's just, at least for, because I'm mostly a bass player, and for me, when I worked on trying to get that scale underneath my fingers and going through the different arpeggios through it, it just fit really nice, and it was really natural for me. So I kind of have to force myself to play in different key centers or try to mix up as much as I can, because like as of right now, like the whole thing with the metric modulation, that's all I've been doing for the past like 3 months or so, which is great. It's great to kind of do a deep dive on those concepts, but at some point I'm like, all right, I need to go to something else and then bring that aspect with me so I can kind of combine everything, so I'm not doing the same tropes over and over again. Um, so I think that's probably my biggest issue, is kind of doing the same things over and over again to an unhealthy point. Because it's good to do that and try to find your voice as like either a producer or an artist, and finding the things you like and that you want to express. But it can kind of it's beating a dead horse at some point. You kind of have to move on to something else. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a struggle every musician goes through, and every producer, even more than musicians. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I got one question left for y'all, and it's about layering. So everyone knows layering can get pretty hectic, and overwhelming. So first off, this is a two-parter. So one, how do you decide when you want to use a lot of layers? And then two, when you use a ton of layers, how do you manage them so that it doesn't get crazy and overwhelming?
So layers, I guess for me, the first part of the question you said, what did you say? You said, how do we use, when do we decide to use them? So deciding to use layers, I think this is something that is dependent on the track that you're working on, of course, but there's some commonalities, of course. It's like orchestral music has a lot of layers. Dubstep has a lot of layers. So sometimes I think it's genre dependent if you're locking yourself into a genre. But I mean, in 2020, there is no genre. So, but and then the second part is if you do happen to use a lot of layers, I feel like the best way of managing it is, well, in terms of managing it in your workflow and in your DAW, I'm definitely trying to group all the sections together. Um, so visually, I'm always going to put like my rhythm section together, my vocals together. As far as mixing goes, once we get past like 60 tracks, things start getting a little bit annoying. So you have to start managing each part of your track a little bit differently. So, for example, one song that I'm working on, we have a lot of buses going, and so I might have a bus just for the guitars or a bus for just the basses, because there's a couple different basses, or just for the keyboards, and then have all of those go into just an instrument bus, and then have all the drums go into a drum bus, and then those are put together into the track. Like that's the track. And so drums getting processed differently. One way to manage a lot of sounds is definitely compression. For example, say you have a pretty busy mix and your drums aren't there. For example, this is maybe a bad example, but you can throw a compressor on the drums to kind of bring them out. I guess a better example would be if you have a lot of percussion things happening and you want to have clarity with everything else, then you would compress the entire drum bus to glue all of those elements together. Similarly to how you're gonna take a compressor on maybe your instrument bus as well, and kind of glue all of your instruments together before they meet the vocals, stuff like that. So there's like there's the visual management of all of those layers, which hopefully is a habit thing. Get in a good habit of naming your tracks and organizing them. Ableton's pretty with it, but I think Pro Tools and Logic actually have a better facility for organizing tracks. But and then like as far as like sonically organizing things, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to like the dynamic range side of things. Mess with your compressors. use big EQ cuts, take big cuts out of tracks, and carve out big spaces for things, more space than you think you need because you don't have as much as you think you have all the time. So that is definitely something to consider as well.
Sweet, thanks. Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so it was when to decide to layer and then how to layer, or was that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you make the decision to add lots of layers, and then how do you manage them?
Yeah, so I'm terrible at piano. So when it comes to like using like a MIDI controller, I'm really bad at it. So I usually live in like the MIDI like keyboard space inside of either Pro Tools or Logic, and I'll kind of just throw things on and off, and just try different things in that sense. And that's just that's stemming from that's just how my workflow kind of goes. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is kind of just playing around and trusting your ear if you think it's going to fit or not. Um, and also getting like secondary opinions and make sure you can ask people who know what they're talking about as well as aren't going to be afraid to express their opinion. Like when I was first mixing, one of the first songs I ever mixed was Wormwood, which is when the singles are released, and I brought it to Logan, and Logan's not afraid to tell you if something isn't working or if you need to fix something in like in a good way. So that was one thing. I had this one section, and in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds so cool, and I brought it to him. Is like, this is why I don't like it. And he gave his perspective, and that really helped me. Like, oh, okay, let me try something different. And it was a case where I was over layering, and the sonic space just wasn't working. So he was just like, why don't you just cut everything out besides, it was basically this bass riff that was going. And he's like, cut everything else out, cut the drums out, cut the vocals out, and, try to build it up from there. So I had a very low sonic space to build up from. And we kind of just did the synth pad building up over and over again until the vocals smack and then the guitar smacked and came back in. And then it was full on, I think it was like 5 guitar tracks, drums, bass, synth layers, as well as I think I had 5 screaming vocal tracks all in a different register going. And that's what it was the whole time, and it wasn't working. So being able to take a step back and realize when you don't need to layer something to make that, part like smack the listener in the face.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Thank both of you. Big thanks to both of you for coming to this and taking the time out of your night to explain all of these concepts to us and show us some of the projects that you're working on.